All right, so it's going to be a video to show you guys how to replace the brake caliper on your vehicle.
Safety first. I use a jack stand and I keep it on the jack as well for extra safety. All right, I got the wheel off and this is the brake caliper right here. The issue I'm having with it is getting stuck. It doesn't look like the piston is going back and it's causing a huge drag, which is wearing down the pads. So culprit would be the caliper on this, so I'm going to go ahead and replace it. This is the new caliper that I picked up from the auto parts store. You can see it comes with everything, the outside bracket, the caliper itself, new bolts, and then it also has the hardware, which is the sliding pins, and then the anti-rattle springs, which all come in the back here. I picked this up for about $80, and I'm sure you can find it for your vehicle around the same price. First thing you want to do is remove the caliper itself. On this one, it's just going to be the top bolt here. You're going to go ahead and loosen it, and then you can drop that down so you can remove the pads. After you loosen the bolt, make sure you take it out and set it aside. Try to keep everything together in case you have to reuse that or it's not included in your kit. At this point, you should be able to slide the caliper down. That way you can remove the pads. On this vehicle in particular, it does have pins. There's pins that go through there, which are right here. They're gonna need to be knocked out with a punch from the other side. You could take like a mallet and put the punch in there and the pins will slide out. There's usually only one bolt that's tightened up to hold the caliper in place, and the other one slides on as a slide pin. So that should just be able to slide right out. Be sure to prop this caliper up. Don't let it hang from the hose because you don't want to cause any damage, because then you're gonna end up having to replace that hose. Alright, so you just want to crack it open a little bit. Don't take it completely off yet, just so you don't make a mess. As you can see, it was dripping down there. It just makes things a lot easier when it's back on. One thing to keep in mind too is if your new caliper doesn't come with copper washers, this is where the brake hose goes. It's going to go basically right in between these two copper washers right here. When you tighten them down, these copper washers, they compress good enough where it doesn't cause any leaks. So if you don't have new ones, make sure you get them before you put the hose back on. As you can see, there's a hole right there and then a hole on the bottom there. That's where the fluid runs through to allow it to get into the piston of the caliper. So after you loosen the brake hose bolt, you can go ahead and take it back off just like you did in the beginning by removing this bolt and then sliding the caliper off. After you remove it, you can go ahead and put the caliper aside. If you want to prop it on top, you can do that, or you can grab a box or something high enough where you can sit the caliper on where it's not dangling from the hose. So you're going to go ahead and remove the two bolts right here that hold the caliper bracket in place. So after you remove the bracket off the vehicle, you're going to go ahead and install it the same way you took it off by installing these two bolts right here. And then make sure you torque it down to your vehicle's specification. So on this vehicle, it has the brake hose in the back of the caliper. Basically, it's going to be hard to access, so I'm going to go ahead and do it before installing it. If your vehicle has it on the side, you can actually do it after you install the bracket on the vehicle, make things a lot easier for you. Go ahead and use like an old rag because you are going to get a little bit of brake fluid that comes out while you're switching them over. Alright, so I went ahead and removed the bolt from the brake hose. You can see the drip it's causing, so like I said, make sure you have a rag to catch that. I'm going to go ahead and put the new bolt on, otherwise I would have switched it a lot quicker to minimize the brake fluid drip. Alright, so I went ahead and switched them over. You can see how I got the new copper washers, one on each side before I put it on the caliper. This little notch right here, there's a little spot on the caliper, that's where it's supposed to line up. So the brake hose has been attached to the new caliper. This is the new bolt that came with it. This was the groove I was talking about. You want to make sure it's lined up with that. You also want to torque it. I haven't torqued it yet, that's why you still got a little drip there. You want to look up the torque specs for your vehicle. On this one it was 20 foot-pounds, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten it to 20 foot-pounds. Now you go ahead and slide the bottom pin on, and then you're going to install your pads. I'm going to go ahead and use the pads that were on there because there's still plenty of life left on them. And you're going to go ahead and do the same process on this vehicle where you got to put the pins in. Some vehicles don't have that, so you won't have to worry. You can just go ahead and slide them right in. Also, another note too, if you did get any brake fluid on any other parts, make sure you clean it up because it's very corrosive. And got the first pin in. I just want to show you guys. This one has a clip that actually has holes in it and it has to go through the pin. And then these right here are gonna, you can see it grips onto each pad. Then it's gotta go behind it and it's gotta pop in the little hole right there to hold it in place. I don't know if you can see that. So that's just one of the clips for it. Same thing with the back one here. I'm gonna do that one after I put the other pin in. All right, so let's give you a better view of the pin setup here. You can see the original one that I just showed you guys goes through that one. And there's also a smaller, or actually longer pin that runs along here. There's a hole in each sliding pin, one there and one down here. And those just simply pop in right there as to keep the pin from moving. Now you can go ahead and tighten down this bolt. Look up the specs on it. Mine was 25 foot-pounds, so you're gonna go ahead and get a Torx wrench and go ahead and tighten that one down. Also, another side note, if your pins don't come greased already, before you put them in, you wanna make sure that you go ahead and grease them up. Same thing with the bottom one. Top and bottom, go ahead and grease them up. All right, so now that you got everything hooked up, the next step is to get fluid in the cylinder. So right now this is empty. Usually this fills up with fluid, and that's what causes the piston, which is right there, to push out and makes the pads contact the rotor to make the vehicle stop. So what you're gonna need to do is loosen the bleeder screw right here. This is the bleeder screw. It usually has a little cap on it. Some do, some don't. But you're gonna go ahead and loosen that. It's usually a 10 millimeter. You could just use an open-ended wrench just to loosen it up and take the cap off. Right now what I'm doing is I'm letting it gravity bleed, which means just loosening it. All the fluid's gonna run through and fill up the cylinder as much as possible, and it should start dripping through here. It just takes a little bit of time. All right, so with the gravity bleed, it took probably about 3 minutes. You can see the fluid dripping out right there. At this point, you can get somebody else to go ahead and pump the brakes. You wanna wait till there's a clear stream of fluid without any bubbles in there, and that way you get all the air out the system. What you'll need to do to bleed the brakes the proper way is you'll need to have two people, one person pumping the brakes and looking for a clear stream of fluid without bubbles. That way you get all the air out the system and you don't have any issues with low brake pedal or pulsating or anything like that. So I'll get into more details on that in another video. For now, I think that pretty much concludes it. Make sure everything's tight the way it's supposed to be. After you're done, tighten this down, of course. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.